trying to think back now, I think it's about 2012, 2013. I was overwhelmed by a crazy idea of getting involved in education. Naive enough to think that I could really make a big change and started cowboying along. And in the process, as I told everybody about my dream, somebody pointed me in the right direction and said, listen, a lot of people are already doing things. You don't have to restart the wheel or redesign the wheel. And then pointed me in the direction of Louise. We met up. And for me, it was like a little bit of a, okay, cool, so I don't have to do it all by myself. And within 5 minutes, I jumped on board. It made a lot more sense than doing something by myself. What I liked about it is that an individual in a small company like ourselves could make a difference, that there's a process in place that we don't have to figure it all out, and that we could also modify the plan according to our strengths and our abilities. So we could work towards our strengths, what our company can offer, what my abilities as an individual, the same as what the school's needs and Sabelo. So between those 4 facets, every school plan would turn out to be different. And you had that scope. I would have hated it if it was completely regimented and I had to work into an environment, let's say another business partner comes from a corporate or comes from a completely different environment, or the school's different. And I like the adaptability where you can figure it out yourself a bit, but you're not lost, you're not on your own entirely. I like the idea that when we went on the journey for that first year, there was a circle of different schools, so we learned a lot from each other. We just pick up tricks from other people. They tried things and figure out, hey, that worked, this doesn't work, and we piggyback on each other's ideas, shared resources. So that was a good learning phase. We tried to do that into the second year. Proved to be a bit onerous time-wise to find gaps, because that is a big challenge for everybody to find same time slots that the principal's free, the business person's free, all the principals are free. So eventually spend more time in admin trying to get together. So after a while we figured, no, we've now passed phase 1 of togetherness in terms of a big circle. It made more sense for us to just continue with our partnership individually. But that first year I think it was very handy to have a circle. It was very handy to have a learning process facilitator that kind of walked this journey with us, kept us a little bit on our toes. Yeah, you have to meet this deadline. So I think that's handy, because if there wasn't that level of discipline in the first year, you could just drift off. There's enough reasons why you can not make meetings and so on. So it's a bit onerous in the first year, but I welcome that. I think without it, you'd probably fail much easier. I mean, typically I would drive around at noon with a bit of a safety concern before. It's not a place I would enter before. So just going there first time around, and the learning process facilitator was Meredy, and she was like a 60-year-old lady, and she took me in there. Okay, it's pretty gutsy, it's pretty interesting. So yeah, it was for me out of my comfort zone, and it was a learning experience. And the day I arrived there, I think they had a funeral for a learner. That was already trauma to see, here's the school, that's what the principal's got to deal with. And within the first month or so afterwards, they were moved out of their building into temporary premises. So I think as our relationship started, one of my early frustrations that I often reflect on, I was trying to communicate with him and mail him, and I was getting no response. I was getting irritable because we want to do things and things must happen. And when we send mails, I expect a response. And I went there to pay a visit again. I figured out that, okay, they've got one dongle to receive mails on. It's got to get printed in one office. Then the print's got to get carried to his office, but there's a budget, so you don't want to spend money on ink and the mail. So it's a different environment to where I live in. It. If we don't have connectivity, everybody shouts, and the IT department's got to jump because telecom lines are down. So there was a huge slowdown for me to say, okay, whoa, things work very differently here. And to firstly daunted by all the things he's got to do, from security to HR to cable theft to feeding things to parents that aren't involved to crime. And there was a huge learning curve for me to get to reality of what's really going on in the job of a township school, the principal, his management team, the teachers. So yeah, that was the early days. Even though we all know that we're not experts at education, and that we're not trying to pitch in that regard, we're just trying to show up, see where we can help. So we've had a good relationship in that way. He's keen, but I think it's a daunting space. And yeah, take my hat off for what he has to do. I'd probably be overwhelmed if I have to drive home every night with that pressure on me. We had a team building session actually here in this room where we brought the staff, the teachers and the other staff to the Rogues premises. I think it was on a weekend, it was a Saturday, which is also difficult. They were really busy and loaded. So when we start showing up, say, listen, now you got to do extra, you can understand if people say, well, we loaded. The extra that you bring or that you ask us to do so that we can one day things will be better, it's like, it's a bit of a, it's not such an easy sell. But we had a pretty comprehensive turnout on the day. The purpose of that one was just to connect everybody on the mission to say, listen, we want to change things. Is there a need for change, and is there a desire for change? Is everybody still connected? Because I think at that stage, it's probably fair to say that a lot of people were just despondent, a loss of hope. I mean, why work so much harder? It's actually an impossible task. It's nearly easier to show up, get your paycheck, do the best you can do, and go home. Because you can't really change the odds in a township environment. I mean, our country all over has got some daunting things. So I think a lot of people can easily just settle on the idea of do what you can, but don't stress too much. There's not much more you can do. And one of the learnings was, hey, you can only go with those who want to. If you force those who don't want to, you build up negative. And once we made it clear to them that they only need to participate if they wanted to, I think we nearly had the same turnout, but with a different mood rather than forcing them. And these are all tiny bits of learning, but I think ultimately making a big difference. One of the things that I learned through the PFP process is that if I wanted to have any influence there, I've got no mandate, no title. So that was a big mindset. It's part of the PFP teaching. It's like, listen, you're going to have to influence, but you've got no authority. That was a team building. It was followed by the 2 strategic sessions. In those, we spent the first afternoon just mapping out the needs analysis. In our wildest dreams, what are all the things that need to be fixed here? And that was a good afternoon. We all knew, okay, we can't tackle all of this. And I think one of our messages we brought across here is, listen, let's pick a few things that we're going to finish. Part of it is we've got to finish something. It doesn't help we get all motivated and hyped and then tackle the impossible and then look each other in the eyes a year later and say, well, this feels painful. We thought we were going to achieve all of that, now we only achieve this much now. So it's that stress level of what you aim for and what you achieve. So we said we'd rather want to overachieve an attainable target than to set the unattainable target. You know you're in for depression. And especially if you want to build up momentum, we want to send a message of we actually finish projects, we actually do jobs, we'd rather say no up front. So out of the total needs analysis, we ended up with 4 strategic initiatives, and we scaled them from relatively simplistic but might not have that much impact to greater impact issues. So let's start from the bottom one. Arts and culture is relatively easy. It might not have the greatest impact on the long term, but it will build some positive energy in the school and people will sense things are happening. And the choir was one of the strong things, enthusiastic things within the school. One of the PFP teachings that were in the back of my mind was this whole idea of going for possibilities rather than problems. So there is possibility for arts and culture. So we really worked the choir quite a bit, made them sing at some events, built some positive energy, got them onto a few movies, and had a couple of art events with Elkanah House, which is like a partnering school. So they went to visit there, shared some stuff. So at least there was some energy around that thing. And maybe at this point it's worth mentioning, one of the early learnings for us was that we might have to have a parallel route on the strategic side, the low road and the high road. And Sabella and I often discuss that. In terms of the low road is very opportunistic. What's available, who knocks on our door, who hears we're busy, and then we just utilize them and show up. That buys us both time and builds a bit of momentum. Because while we needed to show people that we're really not going to disappear, we need to show up month after month, and we need to have something to show for it. It might not have critical long-term impact on the kids' education and their abilities to perform in the world year after, but it buys us time and gets people on board. One of the earliest things we got opportunistically was a friend that donated a jungle gym. I've told this story a million times too, because when first was on this high that we're going to make a difference at the school in Dunoon and blah, blah, blah. A friend contacted us and said, listen, I've got a jungle gym. We're no longer using it. Do you want to donate it at the school? Okay, now, really? A jungle gym? We want to change the world. You want to give me a jungle gym? I mean, we've got to go to big things. But okay, fine, we'll take the jungle gym. So we took the jungle gym there, and for 6 months, that was the best thing we had. We could at least, and the kids at that stage were playing on gravel at the temporary, in between the temporary buildings. So, and we had a few visitors. A number of visitors knew we were busy, and they came to the school and wanted to find out what we were doing, but there was nothing that they could see. They didn't help us show them I had 17 meetings with Sabella and we're planning. There's nothing credible. But the jungle gym with kids playing on it saying, hello, that was like, wow, everybody's hearts were like, oh, I want to be part of this. So there was a big learning there to not be too snobbish and not to be too arrogant about our approach, and just to be very appreciative about the little things and to understand how the little things build momentum to bigger things. Because that story I can just build on, how the first thing led to that, that led to that, that led to that. And if I wanted to plot all those steps up front, I could never have imagined what would lead to the next. But the point is, just get started. Once you get started, it will lead to somebody that will show up on your door saying, listen, we want to do the following. If education is your thing that you see, in my case, I do think it is. I think it lies at the core of most of the other social issues that we have in the country. Then I can't think of a better way that a business can participate in making a difference in education than doing this journey. You will really impact the country. You will really impact the future. I'm doing it for two routes. I want to really have a meaningful life, and I also want to have a better future for my kids. So I'm well aware my kids go to a private school, but if I don't really do anything about what's happening in the total country, I'm just sending them out there into the world with a big old target on the back of their backs, and they're going to have means of getting a good job and make money and have a big fence around the house and be targeted wherever they go. So that's the non-altruistic me that wants to make sure that the country is better for everybody's sake. The altruistic me wants to say, wow, how can I have an opportunity to impact the lives of 1,600 kids with the basic abilities that we have here. It's like, what could give you a greater feeling than to say, listen, we showed up, we did this, and 1,600 kids have the lives have just been changed by 1 degree. And then next month, maybe another degree. And so over 12 years, there's a lot of degrees of change. And that means there's 1,600 odd kids that have got like a complete different trajectory that they're going on. And we had a role in that. I was like, wow, this is like, I don't have another space where I can do that. In terms of personal learning, that's something I didn't really expect. It came as a surprise. I kind of went there thinking, okay, know about everything there is to know, and now we can help. And then you kind of learn that, okay, I've been living in a bubble, and there's a completely other, bigger reality in our country, which I'm now a lot more aware of and a lot more in tune of. And probably the biggest learning is just to know how little I know. And I will never know it all in this time. But that was a good old awakening. You're a lot less arrogant around the braais about what everybody should be doing. It's now very interesting to ask people, so what are you doing? And then it's a good conversation killer when everybody goes like, oh, and they should, and so it's just like, well, that's interesting, and what are you doing? As I said earlier, learn to try and lead more with influence than with authority. Trying to work with possibilities rather than problems. So those are two distinct things that I've just taken out of the PFP world. Whereas in the previous way, it's easier to be in the business it's just to say, I'm saying it's got to be that way because I'm in charge. And typically it's a bit short-lived, and it doesn't necessarily get us on the best route. Probably the biggest gift we got was the arrival of the 4 ladies from Books and Beyond. I think if they didn't show up, I would never have had I didn't have the capacity to do what they're doing practically every day. So they are now far more the Rogues Academy than I am. They should actually be sitting here telling you what's going on. Without them, we would have made fringe influence on the side. They are there daily. They've built a real relationship. They practically seeing what needs to happen. I think what we've learned, and that we often try and reverse some of our learnings back into the PFP larger platform, is to say, they've actually learned what it takes to implement. In the beginning, I was there to build a relationship, to build a trust, to build a little bit of understanding, even just a little bit of understanding. But they are there on the day-to-day basis implementing. And the implementation is where the rubber hits the road. Literacy was our second one, and here's an opportunity where people approached us, where we had a group of volunteer moms, originally there were 4 of them, that approached us to say, listen, they've heard we're busy at the school, they want to get involved, literacy is their passion. They happen to be in the same book club. So, okay, bingo. So here's the first connect. I couldn't at the time have known how powerful that moment would be, because those 4 ladies are now the driving force in the Rogues Academy. They started as a little resource to us, and we connected them, and they showed up and started a reading program twice a week, Tuesday morning, Thursday morning, hour and a half a day with an individual learner. When they came and we said, there's two strategic objectives we want to meet. The one is literacy, so their program fitted straight into that. The second one is language of learning and teaching, which we identified as a massive challenge in a township school. Kids are taught in Xhosa all the way up to grade 3. In grade 4, they've got to switch to English, and they're just immediately behind. With those 2 objectives in mind, and with the fact that these ladies are English-speaking ladies, it was clear, okay, let's do a reading program in English that hits both objectives. The downside is we had 4 starting ladies doing one-on-one reading. I mean, you can only reach a few kids out of 1,600. But again, it was the attitude of, well, just get started. Before long, they had, I think, about 19 odd ladies showing up, 40 odd kids. It's still just a drop in the ocean in terms of the total thing, but at least there's momentum. They got involved at every level of setting up that literacy program, but in that whole journey, they got to know all the teachers, they got to know Sabella very well, and I think about a year later, because of the success of the literacy program, a lot more people came and knocked on our door. One of the programs that we got exposed to was the Year Beyond program that's run by the Premier's office in the Western Cape. The point for me was that the success of the literacy program and the fact that we've got people there that can handle the implementation is what opened the door for us to do the Year Beyond program. If we didn't have the 4 ladies at that stage, they were still not officially part of the Rogues Academy. They were running themselves as a program, Books and Beyond. But they were the implementing power, which I never had the hours for.